Elected into the Endeavor Global Network in 2020, Ahmed Karsli is the founder and executive chairman of Papara. Ahmed is a serial entrepreneur with multiple startups under his belt. He founded Papara in 2016 to offer instant, free, multi-currency transfers to consumers, as well as providing a one-stop shop solution for paying bills, trading digital currencies, and tracking spending habits. Papara is now Turkey's largest neobank, with a current customer base of over 13 million registered users and over 2 million monthly active users. Let's give a big round of applause to Ahmed as our keynote speaker.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Now it's 14 million users, but it's good. So thank you for making it. I'm from Turkey. It is the first time I feel so close to European Union here, which is good. So first of all, I'm not a keynote speaker. Keynote speaker is like, having a gap year before you find your new job. And it's usually about talking instead of acting. This morning, I found out that there are more than 100,000 keynote speakers in the world who talk about global warming. 100,000, if they just stop talking and blew the sun or something like, it would be probably better. So today, I don't have any presentation. I don't have that much time like keynote speakers. I will just, share with you my experiences, the story of me and Papara, and give you my thoughts about, having a bootstrap startup, pros and cons about it. I know that it is becoming more attractive and attractive every day because it is getting more difficult and difficult to reach out capital. So people started to appreciate bootstrap startups, at least, more than they used to do in the last couple of years. And I will expect you to have some outcomes there. So let's start. It's Ahmed. I'm the founder of Papara. As told, Papara is a fintech startup in Turkey. It has been around 6 years since we launched the product. Well, before stepping into Papara, let me shortly tell you about my story. I was born in Germany, raised in Turkey. Technically, I'm a lawyer. I studied law in Turkey. They kicked me from my LLM. This is something you have to do to be a good entrepreneur. You have to drop some school or something. But besides studying law, as she said, I was actually always an entrepreneur. I started my first company when I was 17. Sold it when I was 19 for $1.1 million. And then you are 19, $1 million is like you created a unicorn. There's no way you can spend that money. But I had 3 fails after that startup, which means that, before Papara, actually, I had 2 exits, small exits, but I also had 3 big failures. I went to zero 3 times. And as you know, and you can imagine, you usually get more experiences and, more ideas after you fail on something. So my first startup was actually like a traditional business. So I was lucky that my father in Turkey is a lawyer as well, and his proficiency is bankruptcy law. So when I was 17, he was dealing with a client of his, and that client was running a Vodafone shop, like a telco store, physical ones that you have everywhere in the world. That telco store was actually trying to postpone bankruptcy, and they had a debt of $20,000. That's it. Like a telco store who needs to find $20,000 as soon as possible. Then I had an idea. I told the guy to sell the business to me for free, because I'm 17. If I fail, I don't have any money. No one is going to ask for $20,000 to a 17-year-old guy. But if I become successful with it, it would be a great story. So I took over the business from that guy when I was 17, and I found out on the first day, the main reason why the guy actually failed is really simple, It was a physical store, but there was no one on that street. It is least crowded street in Istanbul, probably. So it's a big mistake to have a store there. And the next day, I had only $200 in my pocket. I decided to build a kiosk where I can go to crowd instead of waiting for the crowd to come to the store. Because that store was actually 200 meters to the seaside, and on this seaside, people from Turkey would know there are millions of people walking on that seaside every month. So I had no money to build a kiosk. I went to IKEA. I bought literally a shoe rack, these white ones that they sell on IKEA. I painted that in the colors of Vodafone, and started to sell some, sort of stuff, the cards that we used to scratch the top of our mobile phones like 15 years ago, started to sell them the next day on the seaside. And at the end of the first month, our revenue was $35,000, and at the end of the second month, we paid all the debt. And at the end of the first year, with the same strategy, I had 3 Vodafone shops, and they all were among the first 10 in Turkey. And I sold that business when I was 19. So this is actually, after like 6 or 7 years, I found out this is what they call growth hacking. But at that time, I actually experienced that instead of reading it somewhere. So after I had that money, like $1 million, I decided to, of course, go bigger, make more money if possible. And I imported the first mobile phones into Turkey, which were able to broadcast TV channels. I'm not talking about smartphones, by the way, like physical phones. They have antenna that you pull, and it broadcasts TV channels. It sounded cool, and I went to zero in 4 months because I could only sell 5 or 6 different devices. 2 of them was actually my parents, 2 of them was my brothers, and 2 of them was some people found us online. I still have 5,000 devices in Istanbul, by the way. If anyone is interested, I can just send it to you. But then I failed. Then after 5 or 6 years, I found out this is what they call product market fit. So I had no research about that, but I learned it by experiencing it. So I believe that experiences actually mean more than definitions. This is the reason why I decided to tell you my story. So in 2015, it was the first time I came out with the idea of Papara. Usually entrepreneurs actually come up with the ideas on the areas they are experienced with, but in my case, it was absolutely the opposite. Before founding Papara, to be honest, I had no experience on finance or even on technology. I only had 1 bank account, and the only reason I came up with the idea was actually I was really mad at my bank one day. I was just playing PlayStation, and there are good gamers and bad gamers. I'm one of those bad gamers, so I have to fill the gap by paying in-game. But my bank in Turkey, which is actually a subsidiary of one of the largest banks in the world, declined my transaction for 6 times in a single night, and it took me 2 weeks to make that transaction. And the bank actually kept me saying that we do not trust the merchant. The merchant is, in this case, Sony, like PlayStation owner company, and their market cap is 7 times bigger than my bank, but they don't trust it. So I said, okay, there is something wrong going on here, and maybe it is time to build a bank. Then I decided to make some research on how to build a bank and so. And I found out that I need around $300 million to get a banking license. I had around 300K, so it is 0.1% of the required capital. And then, by using the advantage of being a lawyer, actually, by creating a legal arbitrage there, I found another way to build a product which looks like a bank, but not a bank. So then I said, okay, let's build that thing. So it was 2015. We launched the app in 2016, August. Bootstrapped the company in the last 6 years. Currently, we have over 14 million users. Our revenue is over than $120 million while being extremely profitable. I think we have succeeded on something, but that was, to be honest, not always intentional. So it is also the destiny, fate, karma, or whatever you call it. So the story is like that. As you know, there are multiple ways to finance a startup. You can just start with your own money if you have it. You can ask your friends and family. You can ask angel investors, venture capitals. If you are desperate as FTX, you can use your customer funds. But there are many ways to fund a startup. On my case, I had to use my own money, which was around $300,000, and ask for my family to borrow me some money. And this is actually how I funded the startup. Then the idea in the beginning was, as I told you, to create a banking product. So the first thing I had to do was actually, of course, to build a team that can do that. But when you don't have that VC or angel investor money, of course, you have limited resources. You have to be extra careful all the time. So I had to build the smallest team possible. First guy who I hired was the CTO. And the CTO that time actually didn't know that I don't have enough resources to run a company. So just to motivate him, I told the guy that, world will tell people your story like the guy who built a banking product alone. So that was actually how I motivated that guy, and he believed in that story. And the second guy was CEO, who actually who were planning to take care of support and other operations in the team. I told him the same story. You will be the guy who is providing services, who's supporting 100,000 users alone. And he liked that story as well. So we started with like 3 or 4 guys, that's it. And with like really minimum amount of capital, but with a good option plan to cover that gap. And after that, I found out that we really need some extra talents because of legal requirements. If you're planning to apply for an e-money license in Turkey, you have to build teams for internal control, risk management, of course, finance and others. But we didn't have enough money for that. So our internal control manager was actually my wife. Our finance manager was my mom. And our risk manager was my cousin, and who was studying art, actually. So this is actually the way you build a startup with your own money. Like, you have to be extra careful all the time, and this is one of the pros and one of the biggest advantages of using your own money. So it is not the perfect way, of course, to hire or start a fintech company, but bootstrapping teaches you never spend beyond your means. This is something really valuable. And this is a talent that you probably keep in the next 5 to 7 years. So we were lucky that the team was actually small but good, and we were able to build a product. But the thing is, once we launched the product, we were of course really excited on the first day. I remember that we launched the product on the 21st August in 2016, and it was 4 a.m. in the morning. And after we launched the product, we had first 3 users in the first 3 seconds. Then I started to do the math. If we acquire 3 users every 3 seconds, we will have 1 million users in 2 weeks, which is amazing. Then it stopped, of course. And in the morning, we found out that, the first 3 users we have was actually fraudsters. They were actually waiting for us to launch the product so that they can just commit a fraud against Papara by claiming false chargebacks the next morning. It was amazing. First 3 users are scammers. The risk manager is my cousin who is studying art. So it is obvious that we would have problems, of course. So the next day, in the next 24 hours, I decided to build a better team. And we hired 3 top talents in 24 hours, which is another advantage of running a bootstrap company. You can make your own decision in a single night, start acting the next morning, and do whatever you want in maximum 1 day. You don't need to ask for your investors, ask the board or something. You just build your own destiny, which is amazing. So it doesn't matter if you fail or not. You are responsible about everything, and you do your own decisions. So it was great that we actually found the right people in the next 24 hours, and we still keep those guys in the team. It has been more than 6 years. So after that, after we launched the product and built the best possible team, it was again all about product market fit. I'm not one of those guys who love consultants and who decide with data only. For me, it is more gut feeling instead of data. And this is something what I learned from another Endeavor entrepreneur called Sidar, who created the first unicorn in Turkey. He told me one day, I was actually trying to come up to a decision, and this is actually one of the reasons why I love Endeavor Network. When you are struggling to make a decision, there are tons of people who actually experience the same stuff like you and who you can consult. So I asked Sidar one day, the importance of gut feeling. And he told me that, whatever I do, it is 51% gut feeling, 49% data. So I decided to follow my feelings, actually. And about this product market fit. So the first product we had was actually amazing. But the problem is, I remember that we had around 30,000 users at the end of the 3rd month, which was actually over than my expectations. But all of those users actually were coming via marketing channels, and the customer acquisition cost was really high, and the revenue per user was really low. The main reason is actually my strategy was extremely wrong, because I decided to build a bank for unbanked people in Turkey, but the problem is it is not so difficult to acquire unbanked users, but the problem is they don't have money. So, and as a fintech startup, this is the worst scenario. If your users don't spend money, you don't make any money. And in Turkey, you know that Turkish lira is not really strong, and the average, like those unbanked users spend is like around $10 a month. And if you just, think about your costs like MasterCard, Visa, like schemes and others, there is no way you can build a profitable startup with that audience, with that like target users. So there was two options, we could just continue onboarding those users without thinking about profitability, or target a better audience and try to build something profitable. I decided to try them both at the same time. So it was the first moment actually I personally decided to go to investors, ask for money, and it was like 4th or 5th month of Papara. The business was growing, when they asked for this growth thing, the growth was amazing, but there was no way that we could monetize those users. So I started to go around in between investors. So I probably visited around 20 investors in Turkey, and again 20 to 30 around the world, and they all said no. The main reason is, first, they were banking technology in Turkey is amazing. There is no way you can compete with banks in Turkey. This is, by the way, a bubble. Banking technology in Turkey is not amazing. Banking technology is not amazing anywhere in the world, by the way. There is a lot to do. I believe that, you can create multiple unicorns in between banking infrastructure, but this is what banks want you to feel. So that also failed. The idea was actually quite simple. Like every other challenger bank in the world, like Revolut and many others, we were trying to raise as much as funds as we can, and then use that money without thinking about profitability. At some point, do an IPO or something again without thinking about profitability. But once that strategy failed, actually, we had no other option to chase profitability. And this is another advantage of having a bootstrap startup. You have to think about profitability because there are no other resources, and you have limited resources. You have to do it. It is not an option. It is not something that you can discuss with your board. So, and at that time, it was great to be in touch with VCs and angel investors, because I strongly advise any new entrepreneur to at least do a fake round, because that critics from venture capitals really teach you a lot. So while I was having those visits, actually, I found out that there are multiple ways of acquire users. So we had, again, two options. Customer acquisition cost is high, revenue per user is low, so you have to decrease something and increase the other thing. So to decrease this customer acquisition cost, we decided to spend every penny that we have on the product instead of marketing, which is an incredibly risky decision, but this is, again, another advantage of bootstrapping a startup. You can take any risky decision. By the way, when I call that way, a bootstrap startup founder can be more risky than a funded startup founder, it is actually not really true, because usually bootstrap startup founders take risks, but they are usually more calculated than other startups, than funded startups. The main reason is when you are running a bootstrap startup, you might take risks, but you usually have only one shot. So you have, again, limited resources, and when you fail the startup. And because you are alone, you are the only one responsible. That psychology actually pushes you to be extra careful when you are taking risks, but you can take more risk than funded startups, which is a good advantage. So we decided to spend every penny on product instead of marketing. We built a product what we call mass payments. That mass payment product actually helped us to acquire significant number of bulk users without any marketing. It works like that. It was a brilliant idea, and I'm still proud that our team came up with that idea. Instead of acquiring users directly, we went to Uber. We told them that, Uber, hello guys, you are paying out to more than 20,000 taxi drivers in Istanbul, but you do those payouts by wiring money from your bank account in Netherlands, and you do it on weekly basis, and you pay around like $5 to $6 per transaction. We offered them to provide those services for free if they ask taxi drivers to open Papara accounts, and we promised them that we will provide those services for free for the next 5 years. We committed that with an agreement. That worked great. We acquired 20,000 users in the next 3 days. We followed the same strategy with 6 different companies, and at the end of the 6th month, we had more than 500,000 users without no marketing. And that strategy worked so great that currently we have over than 14 million users, but we acquired more than 10 million users in a tough market like in Turkey without marketing. So that decision was risky. I don't think that we could come up with that decision if we had VC money, but it was the right decision. And after that, we solved the problem about customer acquisition, right? Now it was time to solve the problem about making revenue. And to make revenue in Turkey, of course, you have to try acquiring bank users, and which means that you have to compete directly with banks. It is of course much more difficult to try to onboard unbanked users, because banking technology in Turkey is again not that great, but mobile banking penetration in Turkey is extremely high. I'm sure it is like one of the highest in Europe. If you have a bank account in Turkey, your mobile banking penetration is over than 90%, which is amazing. So you have to come up with a strong value proposition if you are going to acquire bank users. We came up with 3 different value propositions at the end of the 9th month. We invested in the product instead of investing in marketing. We created 3 different value propositions. First one is freedom. So Papara was the first company in Turkey who enabled anyone to send money 7/24 instead of banking enabling you to send money only in working days and working hours. And we did that by integrating into any bank separately. This is at least what we told people, but it was actually like fake it till you make it. We haven't made any integrations into any bank in Turkey. We just hired, with our last money, 40 guys in our operations team, and those 40 guys was actually using F5 button to refresh the page, banking account page, every second. This is how we have done, actually. It is simple. And the banks were like, how those guys do that technology? How did they build that? We were like, it is like banking grade technology, and so it was a big lie. So we actually faked till we make it, and it took us 3 years to build that required technology to perform any transaction online. But it helped, we were the first in the market who enabled anyone to send money 7/24, which is huge. The second thing is reducing the cost. So because there was this lack of competition in Turkey, banks used to charge $1 per transaction, regardless of the amount you sent. We started to do it for free, which was huge for Turkish population. So it was actually like pity that you send $2 to your children, but they take like $1 per transaction on fees. So we eliminated those fees. And the third thing is UX. So I find it really stupid, but still any bank in Turkey and like many other countries, it is a similar story. I hated that the banks ask for an IBAN number. Like you are sending money to your wife, she's sitting next to you, and you need an IBAN number. So she's there. So there might be other ways, right? So we were the first in the market who enabled anyone to send money by choosing someone from your contact list by using like your Bluetooth or something. And it worked great. Those 3 features actually helped us to acquire a significant number of bank users. And if you check our total active user base right now, more than 80% of our active users had a bank account. So they either shifted to Papara or used Papara as a second option to their existing bank account. So that 2 things actually helped us a lot. But again, they only helped us to acquire users, and it was like time to make money. And when you have enough users, you need to be extra careful about what you do. But it was actually time to make risky decisions, because the only way we could make money on merchants was actually onboarding merchants that the banks didn't onboard. Of course, the first one is crypto. So in the beginning of 2017, just because of some regulations, Turkish banks in Turkey decided to stop providing services to Turkish cryptocurrency exchange. It was a stupid idea. So, people in Turkey had like a couple of months where they couldn't find a bank to buy and sell cryptocurrencies. And we were, again, one of the first movers in that market. We decided to integrate into any cryptocurrency exchange possible and provide services to those guys. At that time, it was extremely risky decision, by the way. I remember that there was 2 Turkish venture capitals, and they actually told us to stop providing services to cryptocurrency exchange. Otherwise, they were not going to give us money. So it was a risky decision. Then we onboarded many other risky markets like that, including online gaming. Some markets, to be honest, that includes nudity or something. So none of them were, of course, illegal, but we actually decided to make some risky decisions and step into those gray markets which are not regulated. And it has been more than 5 years since we made that decision, and currently every bank in Turkey is actually working with those merchants after they found out that it is easy to calculate that risk and make money and make revenue on those markets as well. Would it be possible for us to make that VC money? I don't think so. It is another advantage of having a bootstrap company. You can take calculated risks, which is extremely important. So after that, it was our at the end of the second year, we were making small money, acquiring tons of users without marketing. But there was, again, another issue. We were not making enough money because, there are many opportunities around. You can just go for inorganic growth ways to, you can try to acquire competitors, acquire companies in different markets. There are many ways to, grow inorganically. We didn't want to waste any time. We wanted to look for those opportunities. But at the same time, to be honest, we were a bit scared because at the end of the second year, there was some newcomers to the market who had actually similar products like Papara. We were about to lose our first mover advantage because those guys were actually, they were really well funded. So they were backed by venture capitals and angel investors from the beginning. And we were like, okay, we have done a great job in the last 2 years. But it is possible that those guys are much more funded than Papara, and they can target our users by pouring money on marketing. And it was the time that we decided to invest everything we have and make more money if possible, and spend everything on marketing to eliminate any kind of competition risk. But to do that, we actually had to find a way to generate revenue on every single user. So money transfers were free. We were only making money from our merchants, but there are multiple ways. There are multiple ways to monetize your users. So then we came up with a new fee structure that was the first in the world. I'm proud to say that after we started to apply that fee structure, big global companies, including Venmo, Cash App, and others, followed Papara's footsteps, and that was really simple. So that there might be 2 different reasons of a money transfer, right? It can be friends and family, or a money transfer for goods and services you provide. We found out that there is a huge customer base that use Papara for commercial purposes. We created a freemium product where people can use Papara to sell products, actually, and to accept money. But that freemium is actually helping them to accept up to 10 different transactions every month, which is extremely SME friendly. And that worked great. So currently we have over 100,000 SMEs that do accept payments with Papara. And this is, again, another advantage of having a bootstrap startup. It gives you creativity. So you have to think about profitability, and that makes you really creative. You have to find different ways to make money. I'm pretty sure that if we had some VC money, or if we were well funded, we would probably chase growth instead of profitability, and we would just do it like everyone else in the world does. So that is really another idea. And then I know that we are running out of time. Let's keep it short. And then it was at the end of 2020, everything started to go great. We had money. Our EBITDA was over $100 million actually. We had more than 7 million users. Everything was great. Then problems started to occur. Now it's time to talk about disadvantages of having a bootstrap startup. At the end of 2020, out of nowhere actually, a bad media coverage started to happen about Papara and me personally. I'm not proud to say that, but my face, like this picture literally, was on news, on a specific media channel in Turkey, and I was announced as a terrorist, financing terrorism, laundering money for international organizations. At one moment, after 2 months, I was the reason of the decrease in Turkish lira's value, because Papara users were like buying crypto, sending money abroad, and Turkish lira was going down just because of that guy. I was not aware that I was that capable, but it was not the time to be proud. And at the end of the 3rd month, problems actually started to grow and grow, and it was the first time I felt so alone. Before that, I was just enjoying everything we had, but it was the first time I felt so alone, which is one of the biggest disadvantages of having a bootstrap company. You don't have a lot of people who will actually back you. So, when you are having good days, everyone is around, of course, everyone is so supportive, but when you are having bad days, to be honest, Endeavor is one of a few organizations that back Papara on those bad days. So the problem was I had no idea how to deal with media guys. I had no idea how to deal with them legally, how to keep our reputation, how to be transparent to our users, how to be transparent to our merchant partners and so. But if we had some good investors and if we had a good board, made or covered by investors or with mentors, I'm sure we could have less damage at that time. That was the first disadvantage I experienced. And after that, it was like 2021 April. At one night, again, out of nowhere, I was just sleeping at night. It was 1 a.m. A friend of mine called me and said, Ahmed, have you seen the news? I was like, again, what's going on? And he said, Turkish government decided to ban cryptocurrency payments. I was like, that's not possible, no one asked us, we are the biggest player in the market. And he was right. I just opened Twitter and I've seen that, Turkish government literally banned crypto payments. We lost 55% of our revenue in a single night, 55%, which was like around $10 million per month, at that month. So I was shocked. I was thinking about, again, the future and what to do. But then I found out that this is another disadvantage of having a bootstrap company. There is no one lobbying for you. There is no one talking about you in a good way, around regulators, investors, and others. You are, again, alone in some market that you don't know. And you have no idea how to play that game. Because, if I had, investors who actually had a good portfolio of, let's say, fintech companies, I'm sure they had a better relationships with regulators than I do. So we would really use that help. So that was the second disadvantage of having a bootstrap company. The third disadvantage is actually really simple. There is this lack of governance when you do run a bootstrap company. So it was not a big issue for Papara to hire great talents in Turkey, but it is still a really big issue for me to hire the best talents in Europe. These days, 6 months ago, I left my role as CEO just to focus solely on expansion. I personally moved to Berlin because as for me, a new market is like a new startup. You have to do it like an entrepreneur and in an entrepreneurial way. So these days I'm trying to build a team in Germany, for example, but for me it's quite difficult because every time I try to hire the best talents, the first question they ask is, who backs you up? What is the valuation? And it is the same when I'm facing regulators. I'm sure there are many guys from Saudi and Egypt here. I had to visit Central Bank of Saudi and Central Bank of Egypt in the last year, and it was again the same question: who backs you up? Who are the investors? What is the valuation? Whether you like it or not, this is the world. Sometimes you really need that stamp, and that stamp helps you a lot. That was the third disadvantage of having a bootstrap startup. And the fourth and the last one, and the most important one for me actually, when you don't have any investor there on the cap table, when you bootstrap the company, it is a really big challenge because you have to motivate yourself every morning. This is the biggest challenge I have these days. You wake up every morning, you have to motivate yourself to do better. If not, the company's dreams are limited with your dreams. It is targets are limited with your own targets. If you just, stop dreaming, you have to stop dreaming for 500 people or 1,000 people because there are many people many people you are related to, many people working for you, and you have to set your dreams and targets so high that you fulfill everyone's dreams. And if you don't do it that way, if you just feel tired the next morning when you wake up, it might harm the company and its culture as well. So I think it is also good to have some investors who are like pushing you every day to do better and to become a better person and to build a better company. This is actually like my outcomes after I bootstrap a company. These were the advantages and disadvantages, but I just want to summarize it like, it is not a sprint, it's a marathon. So it is always good to chase profitability and have a longer vision than usual, but there is no single truth actually. I have met with many friends who are founders of like well-founded startups. They have done great job. There are many entrepreneurs who have bootstrap companies. They have done great job as well. I think there is no single truth, but those were the lessons I learned from my experiences. Thank you very much.